What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about the concept of it's being done to you. And so it's easy to kind of be reactive to the now moment, which is something that we're all doing when we're experiencing like resistance or fear or hysteria or a limiting belief or all sorts of different states of consciousness that can start to play out. But it's when you start to recognize the pattern of drifting into unconsciousness, drifting into fear, becoming drained of energy, becoming just annoyed with people, circumstances, events, being very judgmental, all this kind of shit. And we start listening to some of our old slave matrix programming and starting to direct our day based on these kinds of limiting beliefs. It's important to remember that everything that's happening in the here and now, eternal now moment is being done to you and is a direct result of the seeds that you've planted in consciousness that are now being drawn back to you. And so it kind of goes with the same kind of belief system of that God does the work, that you don't have to be the one that does the work. It's being done to you, which is a big load off. It's part of like your new identity in Christ, is to let go of a lot of the matrix programming of like, oh, I need to do, and I need to physically exert my good deeds so then I'm considered good, and I need to fulfill the law perfectly under my own ego and like brain and a body identity. All that kind of stuff is moving into a direction of letting that shit go and learning who you are in Christ and your new identity. And so, part of your new identity has to do with your connection with your relationship with God, your connection with God, which is within you. It's an internal thing, which is like kind of triggering to like the ego mind at times, where it's like, oh, well, because it's so focused on external validation, external experts, external masters, constantly just needing to be fed a narrative from the outside to feel some sort of safety, to feel some sort of an illusion. Ultimately, it's all an illusion, that kind of mentality. But like moving into your new identity and remembering that's being done to you, you have to start becoming more and more aware. You don't have to do anything really. I mean, but in the process I've been directed to kind of pursue, it's about catching the reactive thoughts, or maybe a life situation happens that's completely orchestrated. Part of like the new mindset is realizing the connected nature of all things, that everything's operating under God's law, and a lot of that can be fulfilled by love is fulfilling the law, which perfect love casts out fear. So our old identity was entirely survival mode, fear mode, hysterical separation. God is outside of you, like a judge in the sky is like something I thought, kind of I felt like that, where it's like some external being in the clouds with a beard that was just like almost judge-like, just waiting for you to break one of the numerous impossible laws to do. That's just like, oh, my entire nature is opposite and contrary to this, so it's like everything I'm doing is wrong. So it's like, kind of like letting that identity go for, the new identity that you have, which is something that we're still kind of getting different levels of awareness on. And looking at things as already being perfect. That's again part of like new mindset, leaving the old mindset that constantly wants to try to bring up the past, and also not just the past scenarios, but the past reactivity. Oh, when this happens, I'm going to respond in the same way. Or if you're being still and just kind of vibing in the eternal moment of now, wanting to maybe do something like an addictive pattern, is like wanting to recreate like a scenario to try to get a feeling that happened organically through just the fulfilling the laws of consciousness. It was done to you by your own beliefs. It's your own faith that ultimately is rewarded, good or bad. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's impersonal like that. It's like electricity. It doesn't care if you what you think about it. It's just if you turn the switch on, it's just going to flow. It's the same thing with the how situations can start to manifest either consciously or unconsciously. It has to do with for one, everybody can experience the thought, But whether then you have the corresponding energy of like, oh, that's bringing up some past trauma. Oh, I need to keep myself safe from that danger. I don't want that happening again with that what if and worst case scenario, and a lot of the survival thinking from the Matrix, even the slave mentality, the scarcity thinking, all sorts of things. And so ultimately though, you need to kind of work on what is affecting your here and now reality. That's the next logical step. So it's like, if everything in your consciousness is founded on solid assumptions, beliefs, but the thing with like the spiritual walk is like, as you hit one milestone in consciousness, it's like almost like you see a new perspective, and you have a different kind of, like direction. It's like you're always moving in a hopeful direction, because it's like, as you're moving on this kind of journey through consciousness in the here and now, which is all what we're doing, and just kind of now now, it's like, are we being reactive and manifesting unconsciously more and more like fear and separation by dwelling on it? Or are we starting to move in like who we are in Christ, which has to do with like an essence of like feeling like things are perfectly unfolding, that God is in control, that infinite intelligence is doing this to you to move you through this process in the path of least resistance, getting out of this idea that you need to become perfect through this suffering. You start to realize that the connection you have with your Creator is within you, and the things that are true about Jesus are also true about you. Because Jesus is also inside of you, according to the Bible. And as you start to connect with that inner beingness, you start to be taught these things by the Spirit, and it starts to make more sense in your own kind of life experience. But as you connect with those kinds of thinking of like, oh, well, Jesus was able to do these different types of things. Jesus didn't. You start to look at the life of like Jesus, and thinking in terms of like, sometimes we can be such like programmed with such guilt and shame and just all this dumb shit, that doesn't make sense. But we just get taught like sometimes abusively to believe these things, But then if you start to like think of like in terms of like, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus think, when confronted with this situation? What was the demonstration? And start to move in that kind of alignment. It is important, because then it starts to move you into your new identity in oneness. And that's something that you learn through experience, by seeing it with your own eyes and ears and senses and everything else. But like, remembering that it's being done to you, it takes a lot of the victim mentality out of it, because you're realizing the source of like the problem is your own beliefs and your assumptions, and the way you're thinking about your identity, thinking that there's always some drama to deal with, instead of all things being perfect, because God's perfect. And then when you're connecting with that essence, you start to experience that reflection. So it's like identifying with the Son of God mentality. It's like, some things just start moving in that direction, or it's just like, my my inner state, the kingdom of God, is being externalized, because it is already inherently like that. What the only thing that you're realizing more and more levels of awareness of what already is. It's like you are already blessed is another way to like think of it. You're already exactly where you need to be. Everything that happened in the past, it's like, oh, you're reliving over and over again. It all starts new. Every day is new. The problem that starts to happen is, that I've experienced is, oh, okay, I'm here, I'm present, whatever, I'm breathing, okay, whatever. And then it's like, now what? It's like, okay. And then what comes in, is typically, some old programming of like, oh, I've done that in the past, and that was fun, and maybe something like that. Maybe I just want to feel fun, have enjoyment, excitement. But where the old mindset wants to sit there and like nitpick how to do that, the more that you realize you don't know how to do that, because like most of the time, that shit happened just when you were present in a flow state, and it just happened, and it corresponded to like, an energy that really like resonated with who you are. your true identity, and so a lot of times the spiritual reasons things feel good versus like the physical things, it's like we can have a little story about it, but through a new level of awareness, it like paints a bigger picture, and just trusting that God is naturally just unfolding things perfectly. You don't have to worry about it. And only love is real is another way to think about that. That's a benefit, at least I feel like is a benefit. And as you believe those things, it's done unto you. It then starts to get this correspondence. And as you kind of like become more and more present and like aware of like, our Creator and spiritual things and like this metaphysical law, the more you see it everywhere, and it's like, oh, where in the past, I thought that was like, oh, like a fucked up situation. You can start to see how the beliefs, even with the COVID shit. I mean, you can start just to see, how a lot of people were just hysterical and not able to. It's like they froze. It's like I need some expert, I need some master to tell me something. I need them to save me from this scariness. It's like I don't have the answers, and they were unaware that within them is their connection to infinite intelligence that has all the answers to every problem that you could ever have. Ultimately realizing you don't even have problems anymore. That those problems were a definition and an identity that you used to have. It's like moving into not battling and resisting your old slave programming. It's about because what you persist, what you fight against, it strengthens it. It makes it worse because you're feeding it so much attention. It's like, you focus on the desired end state, which, is like heaven on earth, for the Christian people, the people that read their Bible and actually believe like that's like, something. But, I also believe that, everything's happening now. And so it's like, as you start to, really connect, because like the more that you kind of move in that direction, the more that you see how fluid things become, and how things that seem like a solid real thing in reality turn out to be not that solid anymore. It's like it all becomes now, okay, am I going to continue to experience the unknown, which is scary? I've been listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza. Today as I was like working, I was like, still working on painting this house. He's got a book, Becoming Supernatural. It's about almost 11 hours audiobook on YouTube. You can type that in, Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. And I'm almost 6 hours into it, and he was like, really using this language. I feel like it's like starting to kind of like get into my consciousness a little bit of like the familiar past. It's just something I was like really, not consciously doing, but that book brought a little bit of awareness of like, oh hey, I do that, and that is kind of a stumbling block of like, oh, wanting the here and now, which is always being done to you. It's like your heartbeat is just happening. It's like the almost like the subconscious. It's just happening. Like Joe Dispenza talked in his book about your body is a reflection of the subconscious, which is interesting, especially if you've been into, like I have been, with like the subconscious programming and just like putting the new mindset of impressing the subconscious mind, being more consciously aware of like what I'm feeding my attention to, which then has an influence of how that impresses the sub, and all these kinds of different things. Just to mostly just to what I caught within this pattern was like, oh, I've been in like information overload, because I'm like, I like to hear like those people like that are also kind of getting it. It makes you feel less lonely. That's at least how I feel. But it's like, okay, well, he's talking about the familiar past, and it's like how I interpret what he's talking about, through my lens or whatever, is like, you get like this boredom. I get that, where it's like, okay, now what? Then you listen to like spiritual people, and they're just like, it almost sounds like, oh, you just sit in a cave somewhere and just anything that ever felt good or tasted good or smelled good or whatever, fuck it all, never touch it again. It's like, what? What are you going to do? Just sit here? Just sit in creation and not, that all things that were made by him, supposedly, according to the Bible, But none of the stuff you're going to enjoy and touch and fuck with it all. It makes no sense to me. Oh, Mike, that's your ego. You just want to satisfy the flesh. It's like, what do you get a reality check here? It's like, part of the ego is in believing that God is outside of you and you're separate from creation. So part of who you are in Christ is realizing that you're connected with God and one with creation. So it's like everything in creation is part of God's consciousness, which is on some level reflecting part of your own identity. And it's like this hall of mirrors, and it's like this nesting dolls of just like, it's like everything is unique. It's like everything in creation is unique. You're just like, snowflake is unique. Everything's unique, and it's like God expresses the oneness through the uniqueness. And it's part of that kind of weird dichotomy that you can start to pick up on. Especially if you become more and more like connecting the dots and seeing how everything's kind of working together. But wanting to bring the familiar past of everything being separate to this here and now moment is the problem. And it's like, now what? Well, instead of allowing infinite intelligence to start to implant your mind with new thoughts, new ways of looking at reality, new beliefs, new assumptions, new higher, more divine levels of consciousness and understanding. It's like we keep listening to the familiar past of like, oh, well, let's think about I don't know, women all day. Let's think about, just making money all day. Let's think about like, the game of life. It's like excelling in the game of life. And that's something that, comes from like the old nature. Something I feel like I do, at times of like, oh, wanting to set goals and wanting to hit different milestones, grow, whatever. But at the same time, looking at anything that's in the here and now that's like causing reactivity or like weird fucking programming or whatever, and starting to like make a change in that same moment of like, okay, well, that's not who I am anymore. But then almost like getting tricked into like this familiar past of like, oh, what used to feel good and enjoyable, and getting stuck in these feedback loops of like trying to recreate past scenarios, maybe past like situations that were fun or exciting, future projections of what I think this will feel like if this happened, getting caught in these familiar past programmings where, things were, materialist, like a materialist mind, not being open to being led, but you are already being led. It's like the process is perfect. Part of it is your acknowledgement of it, and getting into a space of like realizing that that is the way things are, just becoming more aware of what already is. It's like growing in just different levels of awareness to this, but like also being open to then experience the unknown, which to the slave mind is scary, and it feels like death. It feels like a death to do anything that's unknown, because the unknown could be a threat. Whereas the old mindset, it's like, well, you got away with it when you did it like this, so let's like try to do many variations of the same thing, just because you had the guts at one point to face the unknown, and it played and it worked out like creation always does, where it's like what you're desiring is on the other side of the fear anyway. So hopefully that's becoming clearer as I'm trying to like say it. It's hard to express it in words, but like bringing this concept of, for one, it's happening to you. So if you got a situation or scenario that keeps happening over and over on repeat, well, it's because it obeyed the law perfectly. And it's like even if it sucks and it's shitty, that's not to say that, oh, when some fucking trauma happens to you, or somebody acts like a shithead or fucking attacks you or whatever, like that's a good thing. Like you should be masochistically abused. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, is that it happened as a result of a correspondence from a law. There's a cause and effect. And that source, that beginning of that cause, is within you in your consciousness. And when you take ownership and responsibility of what's going on in your life, for one, you start getting out of the victim mode, which, as you become more and more convinced that you're a victim, then you start creating this they that's victimizing you, and then you're putting them on a pedestal, giving away all your power to them, even though, you could be in a kind of a totally different state of mind, where you're not that. But everybody's got their own process. But like looking, towards each like now moment, it's like, okay, well, if this is being done to me because I'm unconsciously fixating on what I don't desire to happen, and my energy is then manifesting it on accident, well then I can feel at peace knowing that as I choose peace, then that will start to reflect, and that will be done to me as well. So then instead of like depending on this familiar past of like, well, how did I used to get peace? Well, I used to, I don't know, drink a six pack, smoke a joint, used to, all these different, external means to try to get some sort of relief, some satisfaction, and I wouldn't even say satisfaction, just mainly relief from just the constant suffering. Then you start to go, okay, well, at one point that was an unknown and I faced it, and now I'm just trying to recreate it again and again and again, because the unknown is a scary concept. But the more that you start to rest in the unknown and just trust in God, and that's the big part of like the unknown, is in that developing that trust, being able to just jump and just like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it, I'm not going to freak out, God's got this under control. Okay, I'm going to, as things unfold, as things are done to me in the present moment, instead of resisting what is and then starting to become reactive, starting to want to attack it, start getting into survival mode, as Joseph Dispenza calls it, choosing instead to embody who you are in Christ in that moment, which is not fearful and hysterical. It's perfect. You're handling it perfectly. You don't need to worry about how it affects other people, what you're saying. We all share the one consciousness on some level. So what other people are doing and what they're thinking about and all this stuff and drama going on with them, they're on their own path. Ultimately, we're all different, like frequencies of the same thing at different, like, points on the vertical dimension of reality. It's like you become more and more aware that time is an illusion and things work cyclically. There's a rise in frequency, and there's a contraction in frequency. It's like the more fear and hysterical and like beliefs of separation, beliefs of like you and everybody else are there's nothing going on, there's no connection. You can think whatever you want to think and there's no repercussion. But it's like, not to put out fear or anything, but every thought, is, you might as well have said it out loud. We're all connected, and God heard it, and there's a correspondence to those thoughts, and if they're undesirable and just wanting to attack people, it just comes back to us. It's like so it becomes stupid to like attack another, because we're all one, we're all the same. So attacking another person, even in your mind, then it comes back to you, and then you start to experience that thought and that energy, and it affects your state of mind. And so moving more and more in the present moment, in the here and now, and being able to dwell there longer and longer in states of joy, peace, bliss, oneness, the fruits of the Spirit, basically. It makes it easier to face the unknown, get out of that familiar past thinking, and start to be open to infinite intelligence, to your Creator, to have a relationship, to get understanding, to get new thoughts on things and situations and stuff that in the past brought you pain. That will get transmuted into love, joy, pleasure, relief, whatever it happens to be. There's a spiritual reason for it that can be started to be understood the more that you start to really put these things to the test in your own life. You can hear it all day long, but it's like the guitar. It's you can listen to these people that teach you how to play things, but if you never pick up the instrument and fiddle fuck around with it, you're wasting time and energy just thinking that will be productive. It's like because as you do, then you'll start to develop your own sense of how what's going on and what this is even meaning, and you'll be directed, you'll be guided, as you believe. That'll also be done to you. People that are like in your frequency, into what you're like asking for, what you're like into, they will start to be drawn to you. It's just that's one of the reasons I stopped caring about like internet shit, because it's like people manifest people to them, and it's all part of this spiritual thing, so it's like, you don't gotta worry, again, it's being done unto you, and it's like the more that you're focused on serving others, the more the people that are needing that kind of thing will just be drawn to you, and it's like you don't gotta worry about how that affected other people, how it happened. You just need to worry about letting go of worrying, for instance. But yeah, I just want to bring those concepts to you guys. It's being done to you, and the familiar past. I'll probably get more in depth with the familiar past as like I finish that ebook tomorrow when I go back to painting that house. I said I got about 5 more hours of that book, and really interested to see his point of view as this thing can evolve. There's a lot of like good points of view, good takes. I feel like it's more of a scientific, medical kind of take on metaphysics and the quantum field, as he describes it. We're all singing the same song, and it's just a different way, and so it's like, do I look at what he's saying as like, this is the Bible, I need to worship it, and like nothing he says is wrong. It's like that's not what I'm saying, but it's like, there's takes and there's perspectives, and there's stuff you can glean from other people, but ultimately the teacher is within. So just like a quick reminder to anybody listening, especially if it's like, oh, like, what does Mike have to say? Let me start a cult, and we'll all drink the Kool-Aid together type thing. But like it's more about realizing that like the Bible and a lot of spiritual writings, a lot of them are just instruction manuals that help you to go within to the real teacher, and then put it into practice. Without putting it into like a practice, it won't make sense. It makes sense through practicing it. And you're already doing this. It's like it's already being done to you. I mean, it's like that's the kind of the intense part, because it's like, some people are having a lot of hell being done to them because that's what they're embodying. That's the slave mind state. There's toiling and fucking suffering and getting the undesirable. The Bible talks about, those that have, more is given, while those that don't, what they do have gets taken from them. So it's like they keep going down the drain, and it all has to do, in my opinion, about the way that the law of consciousness can either be a curse or a blessing based on whether or not you're conscious, or you're actually recognizing the truth that we're all connected. That's the biggest thing. Is like, it's not really like you're being punished, being like a punishment, but it kind of is. It's like, I don't know how to really look at it, other than it's like, it's not desirable, to have all this kind of shit, like external, and it's like chasing breadcrumbs and just going down rabbit holes and shit all the time, always being afraid and hysterical. Oh, did you hear this is going to be a bad winter, Mike? And it's like, I hear that every fucking year from somebody that heard it from some dipshit. It's like, I don't care about the temperature or the climate or whatever. I know that's a reflection of consciousness too. It's like, and God's in control of the weather and climate and all. Oh, Mike, how dare you? Greenhouse gases and man-made pollutants. Didn't you know that you need to start tossing your babies in volcanoes to satisfy the earth god of climate? And it's like, I don't listen to people that are hysterical. It's just like, if your point of view was so based, you wouldn't have this hysteria. It's just like, you have nothing that I want. It's like, I don't, so it's like, I have that same vibe with like, some of these people with like trying to push their beliefs of like health in the body. It's like, bro, unless you got a six-pack and are fucking ripped, I don't give a shit what you think. It's like I listen. I don't get sick. Like hardly ever. If ever. So I don't think I will get sick anymore, because I see how it's all fucking playing out. But like, the thing of it is, oh Mike, everybody can get sick, and it's like, that again, your limiting belief, and whatever. You can hold on to that all you want. Don't put it on me. I don't fucking want it. And but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't even know where I'm going with that. I think I'm gonna bounce it. I gotta start making dinner. We've been doing these what is it, home chef? I don't know. We've been getting these meals sent to us in the mail, and it's like really like it, because it's of a different variety than the food I'm used to. That's another thing with the familiar past is like when it comes to like cooking dinner. Um, yeah, I get stuck in like, oh, spaghetti, meatloaf, tacos, um, cheeseburger. At this point, I have a lot of awareness on cooking. I watch like a lot of chefs and like cooking shows and shit, and just a lot of times, I like watching how to do thing videos and people that have reached like extensive levels of awareness of like cooking. It's like Gordon Ramsay, for example, is like, oh, Mike, he's got such an attitude problem and he cusses like a sailor. It's like, yeah, you know what? Don't care. It's like this guy can cook, for one, and at the same time, he shares his knowledge. So it's like I can learn how to poach an egg perfectly from Gordon Ramsay right now. I'd be a fool not to learn that. It's like these guys dedicated so much love and time and attention into the art of cooking. It's no different than somebody that's like playing a guitar or like painting pictures or fucking the amount of attention that someone puts onto something in a evolution of attention. It's like, starting from a level of awareness here, their level is up here. It's like we can close that gap because they're just sharing this information. It's like, so I watch a lot of cooks that I have come to learn about. See how they make cheeseburgers, see how they do shit, and again, every one of them is kind of different, but it has to do with like letting go of that familiar past. When my wife first brought it up to me, it's like, okay, try something new and into the unknown again. And like what I really like about it is we'll get these random ones, because at first we were picking them out, and I probably should just like figure out the top chef. We've done a couple of them. I can't remember what they're called, but like maybe the next video I'll remember to write it down. But like I'm getting hung up on the name of it because I want to give them the props because it is good stuff. But like you see the picture and it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. It's like I wouldn't pick this out and then go to the grocery store and be like, I'll attempt to make this fucking ground pork with cabbage and like corn, like just whatever. It's like I wouldn't just like naturally just want to do that. But then like I'll cook it and then like not try it at all until the very end. I'll follow the instructions just like just like it's written, and then at the end, me and my family will try it together, and it's exciting. And I'm gonna say kind of exciting. We did the same thing for a while with this candy program where it's like every month we were getting candy shipped from around the world to us, and like we'd get together and like again facing the unknown. It was like, oh, are we gonna try this? It's like, okay, I've been pretty much an advocate for saying okay to things, just because I have known for a long time now where it's like things are being orchestrated and moving across a bridge of incidents to the fulfillment. And like the fulfillment for me has always been following the advice of Jesus of like seeking first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, and all these other things, everything else going on in the physical world, be added to you. And so it's like, okay, if this is part of this process, then okay. Just saying yes to life as it happens. I learned that through doing a business too. So it's like when the phone rings, just even if it feels scary, just say yes and go do it. And so but like I'm getting ready to cook, what's it called, mushu pork stir fry, whatever. It's got rice and pork and cabbage and carrots and I don't know what all, but like it's really really good. And so with that being said, I think I'm about. So I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. And until the next now, God bless.